Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, living on a prayer. Okay, so yeah, welcome to Unfrantic fanfic number 5. This is the halfway mark, and it is a sequel to number 4. I will say the 6, 7, and 8 are pretty long, so it's not exactly like these will get any shorter, meaning this, time-wise, this probably isn't the halfway mark. And I'm still in the process of writing 9, so I don't know how long that'll be, but yeah. Anyway, who's ready for beginning Unfrantic Fanfic 5? Time in a Bottle. After about 8 hours of travel, the airship housing Genetwo, Morag, and her blade Bridget reached the cloud sea of Allrest. The aforementioned region was rather isolated from most of the Earth as it existed among the clouds themselves. The few nations that lived there were built upon the backs of titanous creatures that roamed the sea, as there was no permanent land to speak of. Genetwo watched from the ship's balcony as they approached a humanoid-looking titan. As they approached the titan's left shoulder, he noticed that the surface of its skin looked more like desert badlands than anything alive. The ship began to descend towards a dock just under the titan's shoulder, as Genetwo went back to the guest cabin to gather his things. Shortly after, they docked at a place known as Port Anangham, and Morag led him off the ship. Without much of a word, the two walked through the wasteland until they came to a cargo loading zone. From there, they got on an elevator to reach the main city. Morag turned towards Genetwo as the lift began to ascend. "Welcome to Alba, Cavanich, capital of Ardain. I've already called in and booked a room for you at the local inn. I have some business to attend to at the palace, so I'll be occupied for a while. Still, if you manage to learn anything, come find me." The elevator opened to reveal a massive city built of dark iron and filled with industrial architecture. Soldiers patrolled the streets as citizens happily shopped and went about their days. An ornate palace stood towering over it all, with massive steel spires that gave off an intimidating aura. Morag quickly took her leave as Bridget followed behind her, leaving Genetwo to explore the city and find the inn on his own. Putting his hands into his pockets, he started strolling into the city's marketplace. He got some odd looks as he strolled into the marketplace. Most of the citizens had never seen a Pokemon before. His eyes darted between market stalls as he tried to find any sign of the inn. After walking down a side street, a cafe suddenly caught his eye. Or more accurately, someone sitting outside the cafe drew his attention. There was a man wearing a red knit cap that covered his head similar to a helmet, along with a blue sweater that showed off his midriff. He had his feet propped up on the table, and was fiddling with a gun rather haphazardly with his left hand as he sipped on a drink with his right. "I'm telling you, we gotta try the pizza here. That's the one Italian dish they have on the menu. I want to see if it's crap or not," the man said as he continued to play with his firearm, spinning it on his finger. All 6 members of his stand's Sex Pistols stood on the table. Number 2 glared at him as the others looked pouty.
"Mista, we just want to eat!"
Across from him was a much shorter man wearing a yellow jumpsuit and an orange cape. He had a constant goofy expression and an orange fanny pack around his waist.
"But I'm tired of pizza! I got enough of that shit for a lifetime back at the tower! Mista, let's go for something sweet!"
Genetwo's eyes widened as he heard that name. He rushed over to the table and reached his hand out. Hold up. Mista? As in, Guido Mista? The man with the gun glared at him. "Depends on who's asking." "My name is Genetwo Brando. I'm the son of..." He paused for a second, realizing that his father's name would be different in this universe. "I'm the son of Giorno Giovanna. At least the Giorno of a parallel world." Mista nearly spat out his drink as his companion's jaw literally dropped to his feet. "Where the hell did you hear that name? You expect me to believe that horse shit?" The other man pushed his lower jaw back into place.
"Yeah, what he said. You're not even a human. You're some type of Pokemon."
"Honestly, I'm more of an adopted son, technically. Well, actually, he created me. It's complicated." He shook his head as Viva La Vida manifested behind him, and quickly transformed into Golden Experience. "You two can see this, right? You believe me now?" Mista looked slightly more intrigued, but still somewhat skeptical. Genetwo sighed and picked up a rock off the ground, transforming it into a small beetle which writhed around in his grip, before changing it back into a rock again. There. See? Now Mista looked incredibly shocked, nearly dropping his gun. Holy shit, you weren't kidding. He sat up in his seat, taking his feet off the table. Didn't know stands could be inherited. Still, how the hell did you find us? I wasn't searching for you, Genetwo said as he put his stand away. I was brought here to help more Ardain search for someone who's money laundering through their banks, using the name of my organization as cover. Mista and his companion both shared a glance before staring back to Genetwo. His odd companion spoke up.
Funny! We're actually here for the same reason! We've managed to figure out who's doing it, but got no way to reach him. Name's Theodore Noise, by the way, but most folks call me The.
He held out his hand to the Pokemon. Genetwo took his hand, shaking it but receiving a brief electric shock from a buzzer hidden on his hand. Viva La Vida shifted back into its base form as Genetwo stumbled back, clutching his hand as the pain began to leave. Once the pain had dissipated fully, he addressed the pair once more. So, you're both here for Passione, then? Perhaps combining our efforts could be beneficial. Inquisitor Morag and I can get easy access to transportation, meaning that with your info, we could get to the enemy. Clutching his chin in his hand, Mista closed his eyes and thought it over. Makes sense. Plus, our enemy has numbers on it at their side. Our stands are strong, but we can't expect to face an army alone. Genetwo smirked as he crossed his arms. Let's head to the palace then. See if we can't find Morag and give her our plan. The other duo nodded, standing up as Mista left a wad of cash on the table. The three began making their way towards the palace, talking along the way. As the trio strolled through the marketplace towards the massive iron structure, Mista glanced towards Genetwo. If we're gonna work together, I gotta know what your stand is. I know most folks tend to hide theirs, but it might help us strategize. The Mewtwo nodded as a stand manifested behind him. My stand is known as Viva La Vida, which has the ability to copy the stand of any user I've met who's died or met a terrible fate. Currently I've got 4 stands stored in it. Ram Ranch, O Green World, White Album, and Golden Experience. Hearing White Album's name, Mista shuddered. Glad to know that thing's on our side this time. But that means Giorno. A sorrowful look came over Genetwo's face as he looked down at the cobblestone street. My dad's still alive, but he sacrificed himself by trapping a powerful enemy inside of an inescapable prison, at the cost of being trapped in there too. That was over a decade ago, though. He took a deep breath. Calming himself as he looked at the noise. I already know what your stand does, Mista. My dad told me a lot about Sex Pistols. So what have you got up your sleeve, Noise? Rubbing his hands together, the Noise gestured to his fanny pack.
This is my stand right here. It's Rubber Band Man. Allows me to stretch my arms, do all sorts of cartoonish shenanigans, and pull items out of it that would be convenient at the moment.
He reached inside before yelping out at pain. Both his companions turned to look at him, watching as he tearfully pulled his hand out, revealing it had been caught in a mousetrap.
But it only works for me if it thinks it's funny to do so. If it thinks it's funnier to hurt me, it will.
Seems like it could be pretty useful in a pinch at least, Genetwo said as the Noise shoved the mousetrap back into the bag. Still, we're close. Best to stay on good behavior so as not to alert anybody. The three soon approached the palace, and after explaining their purpose to the guards, they were escorted towards the Inquisitor's chambers. Compared to the more industrial looks of the streets, the palace was decorated in deep red shades and regal velvet furniture. It still kept the industrial aesthetic, though. Eventually they reached Morag's chambers, going inside to find the Inquisitor deep in some paperwork as Bridget stood beside her. She glanced over them before turning around towards them. Genetwo, I see you've brought company. Mista stepped forward, posing with his gun with a cocky smirk. The name's Guido Mista, and this here's the Noise. We're here from Passione, looking for the same jerks you guys are. We know who's done it, but we have no way of fighting them alone. Genetwo here said you could help. Morag stood up from her seat. We'd be happy to give you our aid, provided you lend us yours.
To be frank, we've got no leads on who this organization could be. They've covered their tracks rather thoroughly. Not waiting for permission, the noise jogged over and jumped into one of Morag's armchairs. Well, we've managed to trace them, and they're a real nasty Well, we've managed to Fuck, I forgot the voice. Well, we've managed to trace them, and they're a real nasty bunch. Who you're looking for is the Top Hat clan. They're a bunch of rich bastards who do crime to gain more power. They stay really mobile, though, so it's hard to catch them without a similar speed. Their base is some kind of airship, and it almost never comes down. Realization crossed Morag's face as she turned around to her desk, typing away on a computer. We have reports of a strange airship seen floating around the Leftarian archipelago, but haven't had time to mobilize on it yet. I'll go ahead and prepare 3 warships for takeoff. Genetwo crossed his arms and thought for a second. Your soldiers can probably deal with most of their grunts, but I've got a feeling that the biggest worry is going to be the top brass. In an organization where that much money is being handed around, whoever's in charge has to have some real firepower up their sleeve. That's when Morag turned around with a look of determination evident on her face. Then the 4 of us will handle them. We'll form a strike team and take down whoever's running this whole thing. Before any of them could continue with the plan, Mista's expression turned sour. What the hell did you just say? There's no damn way I'm going along with this. Everyone turned to look at him as the noise facepalmed. Seriously, Mista, again with this crap? Mista's expression didn't waver. Of course! I'm not going on a mission this important with a team of 4 people. We're all going to be cursed and die the moment we board that damn ship. I'm not even going to leave port unless the strike team is 5. Bridget stepped forwards from where she'd been dutifully standing near the desk. Hold on. With me traveling alongside Inquisitor Morag, would that not count as 5? He narrowed his eyes at the blade. No, it wouldn't, as we'd have to count our stands as well. Since you and the other stands share being with your users, that's still practically 4 people. Everyone else looked exasperated before Genetwo pulled up his phone. If I can get us a 5th, would you come with us? We could really use your skills. Mista stood still for a second as he thought to himself before giving a brief nod. Genetwo let out a brief sigh before calling one of his contacts. Morag, send a vessel back to Toledo as soon as possible. I know just the guy for the job. About a day later, Genetwo was running through the halls of the red airship, blasting shadow balls at Top Hat goons as he charged towards the cockpit. Morag followed close behind, blue flames spreading around her as the ship rocked back and forth due to the bombardment going on outside. Nearby, the noise was using a big squeaky hammer that he had pulled from Rubber Band Man to whack the shit out of a few more of the downed grunts with a big grin on his face. The high-pitched cries of Mista's Sex Pistols could be heard as his bullets ricocheted through the halls, picking off stragglers. Once he was certain they had met their targets, Mista caught up to Genetwo and looked over to him as he ran. His Sex Pistols returned to him as he reloaded his gun. You think your guy's gonna hold up? He's keeping up so far, but if we run into a stand user, he might be fucked. Genetwo looked behind him, listening as they both heard maniacal laughter echoing through the halls. I think he'll be fine. Besides, it's nice to let him let loose every once in a while. Behind them, a crocodile stepped out of the blue flame while cackling like a madman. He held one of the goons by the throat with dark energy pulsing from his hands, staring them in the face intensely.
Guess what, dipshits? Your new king has arrived!
Thrash Fist threw him to the ground, sending his top hat rolling off his head as he pressed the heel of his foot in the side of his skull.
I'm taking every last dime you've got!
After yoinking the man's wallet, he charged after the rest of his group, rushing to catch up. The noise turned around as he watched the croc catch up with the rest of them. Even with him going at high speed on his skateboard, Thrash Fist's panicked scampering was still able to somewhat keep up.
Gonna be real honest, the guy's a real loose cannon, but you gotta admire that showmanship.
Hang on, I lost my place. Even as the goons tried to slow them down, everyone continued forward at an absolute breakneck pace. All of them had been through enough trials and tribulations to this point that simple brawlers were little threat to them. With little resistance, Bridget slashed through a set of heavy metal doors, and the strike team burst into the cockpit. At the front of the room, Staring out over the cloud sea was a man seated in a chair behind a desk with his back turned to them. They could clearly see his sparkling golden top hat, though. Next to him was a member of the clan with a gnarly orange mustache and heavy cybernetic augments.
Boss, they finally arrived. Should I dispose of them?
The cyborg said in a deep voice as his metal arm shifted into a laser cannon. The boss waved him off as Genetwo led the group closer to the desk. Morag gritted her teeth as she pointed her blade forward. You're under arrest for money laundering, murder, and honestly too many crimes to even list. Laughter could be heard from the boss. The chair began to turn around, revealing a large man in a pink suit, with purple hair barely visible from under his hat.
Please! The assumption that you're going to arrest me is filled with humorosity!
Red White cackled some more as he scanned the group.
I'd questionify while you're working with criminals such as these, but I think I've already equated the answer. It's been some time since the playroom, hasn't it, Genetwo? I've never had the dishonor of facing you in fisticuffs, but I've done my homework.
Genetwo scowled as his stand formed behind him.
Red White, so you're the one behind this all? I thought your ass was behind bars.
Red White slammed his hands on his desk, a wicked smile on his face.
Money can purchase many multitudes of beneficiaries that can serve me. It can buy me out of imprisonment. It can buy me the CEO position of this group of ne'er-do-wells. It can even buy me powers, the likes of which will stupendify any foe I face.
He continued to cackle as everyone readied their battle stances, when suddenly he slammed a button on his desk and a trap door gave away under the strike force. As the floor opened up, everyone barely had a moment to panic before they all dropped down into the lower floors. All except for Genetwo, who stayed floating above the hole. He sighed and shook his head.
Clearly, you haven't done your homework if you really thought that'd work.
Putting a hand up to his face, Red White let out a deep sigh.
I was hoping to let my right-hand man weaken you all before I eliminate you, but I suppose I can practicize on you.
He reached into his desk, rummaging around inside it. As he did so, the right-hand man's legs turned into a jet engine. He rocketed down into the hatch before Genetwo could follow. It closed up behind him, not allowing Genetwo to enter.
Viva la vida! Golden experience!
Genetwo yelled as his stand transformed and rushed towards Red White. Before any of its punches could make their mark, Red White pulled out a set of 5 discs from his desk and began shoving them inside of his own head. He groaned out in pain as all 5 slid in with some effort. As Golden Experience reared back his fist, prepared to knock his opponent out, it was met by the fist of another stand. A large, black humanoid one, with spikes covering its rounded head, appeared behind the CEO, as he gave a cocky smile. The rest of the group fell deeper into the ship, scrambling as they tried to figure out a way to hit the steel floor beneath them, a way not to hit the steel floor beneath them at Mach fuck. The noise reached into a stand, pulling out a bubble wand. With great haste, he blew into it and created some comically large bubbles that surrounded each of the group's members, and carefully lowered them to the ground. Very gently they descended, the Sex Pistols bouncing around Mista's bubble as they used its elastic interior like a playground. Once they reached the floor, Mista was the first to push himself up.
Oi, is everybody okay?
He glanced around for a bit to get a quick head count.
Where the hell is Genetwo?
Thrashfist groaned as he pushed himself up.
I think that business dummy thought he'd fall like the rest of us, but he didn't know that most psychic types can float.
Damn it!
Mista yelled out as he clutched his head.
Why do we always have to end up with 4? Now we're all gonna die for sure.
The right-hand man descended into the cargo hold they now found themselves in, his rocket feet turning back to normal as he landed.
Don't fret. I'll see to it that you end up with 3, then 2, then 1.
His mechanical arm turned into a laser arm as he threateningly stared down the group.
The rest of our team may be weak-minded and weak-willed, but you'll find nothing like that from me.
Morag gritted her teeth as she started to charge him with both her blades. She quickly found, however, that he was quite capable of blocking each of her strikes. Even as Bridget's blue flames threatened to scorch his mustache off, Morag would go for an overhead slash, only for it to be met by his laser blade. Then she would try to swing her other blade into his side, only for him to quickly block there as well. The noise reached into his fanny pack, only to pull out a live alligator which started snapping at him. He screamed as he dropped it back in.
Looks like fate's not on our side!
As he continued to clash with Morag, the right-hand man gave a sinister smile.
Especially once I activate my true power!
He held his organic hand upwards, a large, ornate hourglass forming in his grasp.
Behold, the power of my stand! Time in a bottle!
Once he cried out its name, something that looked like sand started to flow into it. Morag continued to try and swing at him, even through his little speech, but found that his movements were getting faster. Eventually he obtained the upper hand, switching his blade into a laser gun in the blink of an eye and firing into her chest. Morag went flying backwards, Bridget traveling with her as they collapsed into a nearby wall. With a roar, Thrashfist ran in as the noise tried to pepper their foe with cartoony bombs. Dark energy surrounding his claws, Thrashfist began to make a series of furious swipes at the mustachioed marauder. Each attack, though, was met with a swift dodge or an even swifter block. The bombs the noise threw did little to help, as they were either swiftly batted away or dodged before they could erupt. The Croc gave a fanged grimace as even he was beginning to grow tired of his own constant assault.
Damn it! This cunt just got fast as hell!
Of course, Thrashfist couldn't see the man's stand, but the others in the room could. Mista reloaded his gun hastily as he looked closer at the hourglass, watching as it absorbed more sand. I don't think he's getting faster. I've fought enough stands to realize to figure out there's usually some logic behind their appearance. He's not getting faster. We're all getting slower. His stand slows time. As the right-hand man backhanded Thrashfist out of his way, he turned his attention towards Mista.
Clever. Very clever. The more sand my stand absorbs, the slower time becomes. Soon I'll be able to stop time completely, and nothing will stand in the way of me kicking your ass!
Mista's gaze grew stern as he stared down his opponent.
So all we need to do is stop it from absorbing the sand.
He aimed his gun down range, the Sex Pistols readying themselves.
Let's see how it stands up against hot lead, dickwad!
He fired his gun, all 6 of the Sex Pistols riding atop the bullet.
Yeehaw!
They screamed as they approached their target. The right-hand man brought his metal hand up, smirking as he was ready to catch it out of the air. However, number 6 kicked it away before he could. The Sex Pistols took their positions around him, hovering around like flies on a corpse. They continued to kick the bullet back and forth as the right-hand man tried desperately to catch it. Soon enough, it reached a speed where even in a slow time it was going to the speed of a normal bullet. One of the Sex Pistols kicked it at a stand. The right-hand man wasn't able to dodge, but knowing it would cause a lot more damage if his stand was destroyed, he dismissed it. The bullet ripped through his palm as he fell to his knees. The Sex Pistols cheered as number 5 floated over to Mista.
We did it, Mista!
Mista held the little guy in his hand as he looked over at his opponent. A grimace came over his face as he saw the opponent get back up. Before he could cry out for his stand to dodge, the right-hand man blasted a massive laser from his red eye, sweeping it around the room and frying all of the Sex Pistols. Mista erupted in blood and went flying as Thrashfist and the noise prepared for battle. With a smug chuckle, the right-hand man resummoned his stand, which began absorbing sand again.
My hand may hurt like hell, but I'm not out of the fight yet. Nothing can compete with my time in a bottle.
Back in the cockpit, Viva La Vida's fist was met by the black humanoid stand. Still taking the form of Golden Experience, Viva La Vida backed off as the other stand came in front of Red White.
Feast your eyes on my mitaceous stand! 9-inch nails!
As he said that, large iron spikes puffed out of every part of the stand's body as it flexed. Genetwo grimaced as Viva La Vida stood by his side. So its power just being a damn pincushion? Here, I was thinking you'd pose a threat. Red White kept up a cocky smirk, despite Genetwo's insult.
How about we head somewhere a little more spacious? Sending this ship fluctuating towards the Earth is not high on my list of priorities.
Before Genetwo could comment on the misuse of the word fluctuating, he found that they were both teleported on top of the ship. He looked around, trying to figure out how they got up there while Red White laughed.
Like I've said, I've done my homework. My main forte is gathering information, and I already have full awareness of the power of your stand. I don't have a stand of my own, you see, and I don't quite feel like testing my luck with the arrow. Luckily for myself, I happen to own a collection of discs I acquired from an auction. These discs were created by another stand user, and allows anyone to gain the power of a stand that was stolen from another. 5 should be enough to defeat you. Now, face the power of live and let die.
9 Inch Nails stepped aside as a slender, robotic-looking stand took its place behind Red White. Genetwo charged him without a second thought, watching as the stand gripped the CEO's hand as he made a finger gun. With a quick motion, he fired a bullet from his finger that ripped into Genetwo's shoulder. The Pokemon groaned in pain as he backed off, letting the CEO approach. Not wanting to get in 9 Inch Nails' range, he looked over to Viva La Vida.
Looks like I'm gonna need some armor. Viva La Vida! White Album!
The stand transformed into the suit, covering him rapidly as Red White fired another bullet. Genetwo reached out, freezing it in place in a solid chunk of ice. Upon closer inspection, though, it was clear that the bullet was a small portion of the man's blood. Red White smirked.
That's the fortitude of my live and let die, to rapidly expel any liquid inside my body as a projectile. You can't dodge forever, and I won't run out of ammunition.
Genetwo continued to skate around and freeze the bullets as Live and Let Die continued its unrelenting offense. However, one of the bullets somehow skirted past his defenses, cutting through his leg as he was hit with a searing pain.
What the hell? That should have frozen! Heat of the moment's fantabulastic ability just activated. Most individuals see a stand whose only purpose is to boil water as useless, or combined with Live and Let Die's ability, it makes every impaction absolutely steaming! Steaming enough to melt through your white album!
He cackled as he continued firing wildly at Genetwo, who was only narrowly able to dodge the bullets through skating around. Panic was clear on Genetwo's face as he tried to figure out what to do. An idea came to his mind as he backed off slightly.
Viva La Vida! Ram Ranch!
As the Wiimote came into his hand, he put on the strap and started spinning it around his wrist. His stand began rotating the blade rather quickly, before Genetwo chucked the remote at Red White. Now the CEO was the one to panic, as 9 Inch Nails stepped in front of him to block the out-of-control stand. Red White was groaning loudly as 9 Inch Nails was barely able to hold back Ram Ranch's blade.
Planet Waves! Smite him from existence!
Wait.
Planet Waves! Smite him from existence!
Another stand appeared that looked like it was made of realistic muscles. It raised its hand as 9 Inch Nails continued to hold back the flailing Ram Ranch. Genetwo looked up as meteors began to rain down from the sky. He raised his hands and formed the Psychic Shield, blocking the meteors while clearly being under significant strain. He glanced over to the CEO, watching him slowly approach as 9 Inch Nails continued to poke and jab at the rogue Ram Ranch. That's when his 5th and final stand appeared behind him as a horrific grin formed on his face.
My final stand. I'm well aware that your family has some historical precedent with this one. Sticking a camera in your therapist's office was one of the most splendorific ideas I've ever had. With the power to teleport me wherever I please, I call upon Sergeant Pepper!
Genetwo's eyes widened as a somewhat stereotypical humanoid stand in purple military attire appeared behind Red White. He remembered the horror stories from his father about his grandfather's defeat at the hands of this very stand. He thought back to how its user managed to temporarily kill his father, to the point where he needed to be stitched back together. He never thought he'd come face to face with the stand, and especially never imagined that he'd be so paralyzed with fear that it would be able to punch him in the jaw, sending him falling to the floor. Red White laughed as Sergeant Pepper continued to brutally beat up Genetwo, not giving him the dignity of a stand rush to make every hit feel more impactful. 9 Inch Nails kept a hold on Viva La Vida, preventing it from turning into any humanoid forms that may be able to contest Sergeant Pepper. For now, he was absolutely fucked. Back in the cargo hold, the right-hand man was currently beating the shit out of the noise. Holding his stand in one hand, he was using the other to lift the little gremlin up by the front of his shirt, while he drove his knee repeatedly into his chest. After he was thoroughly beaten, The right-hand man cast him aside like a used tissue. He landed next to the only fighter remaining, that being Thrash Fist. The villain laughed as he stared at the croc.
Surprised that the last man standing is the one without a stand. So I'll make sure to take it slow. By now, time in a bottle has almost acquired enough sand to completely stop time. In only 20 seconds, I'll have won.
Thrash Fist backed up towards the noise as the gremlin grabbed onto his leg.
Please, take this! It could be our last hope!
He took off his fanny pack, which contained the power of his stand. He handed it over to Thrash Fist, who looked confused but put it on. The croc looked and took a deep breath as he reached inside.
Fuck! I hope this ain't a live croc like last time!
He reached inside the fanny pack and pulled out a slip of paper, reading it over with a confused expression as he glanced up at the right-hand man. A wicked smile on his face, the right-hand man cackled as he rose his stand into the air.
It's time to die! Time in a bottle! Stop!
Before he could continue, Thrash Fist read off the sheet of paper.
So it's the same type of stand as Rubber Band Man!
Thrash Fist had always been a petty loser. He'd always been an asshole who never got his way, and everyone knew it. His losing streak was nearly a mile long at that point. So when time fully stopped around him, he never expected that he'd be able to move within it too. Even the right-hand man's movements had gone back to their normal speed as Thrash Fist looked around at his frozen allies. A wide grin came across his snout as he cracked his knuckles.
Looks like I finally got a damn break! Now, it's time to break you!
The right-hand man was barely able to react as Thrash Fist rushed at him with darkened claws. He tried firing some laser blasts at him as he approached, only to find that his blasts were frozen in time the minute they left his arm. Thrash Fist slashed at the organic side of the man's face, leaving deep claw marks as he staggered back. Without any hesitation, Thrash Fist continued to lay into him with everything he had. After nearly a minute of getting the shit beaten out of him and having his cybernetics ripped out of his body, Thrash Fist punched him in the face and broke his laser eye. The right-hand man fell to the floor, completely knocked out. Not wasting any time, Thrash Fist lifted his unconscious body and carried him to a nearby door that led to an exterior balcony. Using his foot to open the door, he unceremoniously tossed the man off and into the cloud sea below. He wiped his hands with a confident smile as he watched his body disappear below the clouds. For the first time in a long time, he had won.
Yes! Yes!
Thrash Fist yelled as he threw his fist into the air. He stood on the balcony and laughed wickedly as the other combatants in the room began to pick themselves back up. Tears began to form in his eyes as he laughed for the world to hear.
I did it! Thrash Fist! King of Thrashtopia!
On top of the airship, Genetwo was still trying to survive the vicious beating being delivered by Sergeant Pepper, while Red, White, and his other stands stood over him to ensure he wouldn't try anything funny. The businessman crossed his arms as he stared down his adversary.
My intel has also given me a heads up that the Wiggler happened upon a stand arrow. Perhaps we'll pay him a little visit after you've been dealt with. Selling off stand power to the highest bidder sounds like a great way to make a gigantesque amount of cash.
From where Viva La Vida was being held down by 9 Inch Nails, its eye turned towards its master. He could also faintly hear a triumphant shout echoing through the clouds, and faintly made out something about Thrashtopia. Genetwo felt information beaming into his mind, remembering the moment where he saw the right-hand man descend into the cargo hold. Even as he was being beaten, a smile came across his face.
Viva La Vida! Time in a bottle! Tokyo Tamare!
His stand started shifting into the hourglass, Red White panicking as he turned towards 9 Inch Nails, and prepared to order the stand to crush it. However, Genetwo reached out with his psychic power and yoinked the hourglass towards him, clutching it tightly as he assumed a fetal position. Time began to slow as Sergeant Pepper's strikes became less and less violent. He knew that he needed to keep the stand activated. He couldn't shift it into something that could help him defend himself, unless he wanted to lose the effect of his slowed time.
Eventually, time had slowed to a point where he could safely stand. Walking past as Sergeant Pepper continued trying to kick his shit in. He casually limped over to Red White, his body bloodied and bruised. He reared his hand back and punched Red White in the face with all of his strength. A smirk crossed his face as he threw in a couple more strikes for good measure, mostly aimed at Red White's face. Of course, he had to throw in one quick kick to the man's crotch as well. He turned away as Red White began to fly backwards extremely slowly, before returning his stand back to its base form. Red White cried out in pain as he went flying backwards, crashing onto the roof of the ship with a hard thud as the discs ejected from his head. Before he could put them back in, Genetwo psychically grabbed them and shoved them into his pocket. The CEO stared at the Pokemon in fear as he approached him, now not being able to see Viva La Vida forming in the Golden Experience. Using stolen stands because you're too cowardly to get one of your own? It's fucking despicable. These stands are someone's legacy, someone's spirit, and you just casually abuse them for your own personal gain. I won't allow it any longer. He rushed at Red White, who cowered in fear as Genetwo began rushing him with Golden Experience. Duma 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 Duma! He screamed as he pummeled the man, until his suit turned from pink to crimson. With one final punch, he reared back and sent Red White flying towards one of the more Ardain warships. His golden hat fell into the cloud sea as he crashed into one of the loading hangars in a heap, with some soldiers on duty immediately arresting him on the spot. A few minutes later, Genetwo found his way into the cargo hold and used Golden Experience to heal the wounds of his allies. The crew found their way back to the cockpit, where Genetwo and Morag found the drawer of his desk filled with dozens of stand discs. A cross expression came over Morag's face. "We'll need to confiscate these. Weapons like this shouldn't be allowed to spread freely." Genetwo turned towards her in a flash. "No. I'm taking them with me, and it's not up for debate. I, Genetwo Brando, have a dream. These stands were stolen from their proper users, and a piece of their soul went with them. I will not just stand idly by and let them suffer any longer. I promise that I will find their users and return them, no matter how long it takes." Morag was about to retort, but Genetwo cut her off. "Imagine if someone stole Bridget from you. I know that you'd probably do anything to get her back. Don't rob these stand users of their own partners." She let out a deep sigh as she looked at Genetwo. "I know it's not proper procedure, but your words ring true. No one other than the people in this room knows about the discs, so I'll leave anything about them out of my report. Take them, and stay true to your promise." With a contented sigh, Genetwo gathered the discs and put them in a bag. He began to walk out of the room as the rest of his companions followed behind him. Hours later, after the Top Hats were rounded up and arrested for their crimes, Morag stood with her companions at the airship dock where she and Genetwo had first arrived. She gave them a small bow as Bridget stood dutifully behind her. "I cannot express how grateful I am for the aid in this matter. You've all done a great service to Ardain. I've instructed my men to take you anywhere you may need, and of course, award you with some financial compensation for your troubles." The Noi smiled and gave a thumbs up.
A one-way trip back to good old Napoli is just what the doctor ordered.
He looked over to Genetwo, still keeping his expression.
Plus, I guess a trip back to wherever the hell you're from.
Genetwo looked down at the man for a second, before turning his gaze to Mista. "Actually, if it isn't a problem, I'd like to come with you. Too. I've wanted an audience with your boss for some time now, but he's an elusive one to find." Putting a hand on his hip, Mista thought it over. "I mean, it should be alright. The boss loves visitors, especially ones who've got a good story to tell. I'll phone him up while we're on the way, see what we can arrange." Mista and the Noise waved to Morag before walking towards the ship. Genetwo gave her a firm handshake before turning and doing the same. Thrashfist looked back towards the trio with a flabbergasted expression.
Hey! Gene, you can't just run off the nap oil or whatever and forget about me! What the hell am I supposed to do?
With an amused smirk, Genetwo turned towards his underling. "I'm sure there's plenty of pizza joints around there to sink your teeth into. Trust me when I say they've got some of the best food in the world there." Thrashfist seemed satisfied with that answer, following along with his tail wagging as Morag turned away and headed back towards the capital. In short order, the ship took flight and began soaring off into the vast cloud sea. Giorno Giovanna sat in his home office, his legs crossed as he sipped a cup of tea he had brewed himself. In front of him was an ornate coffee table and a chair similar to his own. His desk loomed in the back of the room, but he usually preferred to be a little more intimate when having meetings such as this, so it would go unused. He glanced outside at the nearby vineyards, wondering if he could spot his guest approaching. Giorno's thoughts were interrupted by a firm knock at the door. He responded in turn while wearing a soft smile. "Come in." He wasn't as shocked as he should have been to see a legendary Pokemon enter, taking the seat across from him. If anything, the Pokemon seemed far more nervous than him. With him, he carried a duffel bag that he had slung over his shoulder. Genetwo put on a good smile as his tail draped over the arm of the chair. Thanks for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to finally be speaking with you. Please, the pleasure's all mine. Tea?" The Mewtwo gave a small nod, accepting the offer. He set his cup of tea down and poured a small cup from a warm teacup sitting on the table. He handed the cup over and met Genetwo's gaze. "It's rare that someone graces this office who doesn't want to talk business. Though, if you'd like to discuss any, I'd be more than happy to. Now, Mista informed me that you claim to be my son. In a sense, yes." He tried to keep his eyes locked with Giorno, but he was having a hard time. "In another world, one where your father defeated his rivals, a version of you created me. We weren't biologically father and son, but he treated me as such." "I see," Genetwo replied as he picked up his cup once more. "I never met my birth father, as my mother fled from him before I could be born." He opened his wallet, looking at the picture of Dio carefully tucked inside. "From what I hear from him, he was a bit of a repulsive man. What was he like with you?" "Well, I never met my grandfather. He had died some time before I was born. As for my father, though, well, I see a lot of him in what I've heard about you. He cared a lot about his subordinates and had a flair for the dramatic." Genetwo glanced around the room, taking in the extravagant decorations. "Though that manifested less in his taste in decor and fashion, and more as, let's just say theatrical stunts." Genetwo chuckled to himself. "I see. You don't have to hide from me that the man was a supervillain. At least you haven't picked up that from him. Let's change the subject, though. What's this I hear about a stand that can copy others? Viva la Vida, I believe you called it." The small flying stand appeared by Genetwo's side, before morphing into a replica of Golden Experience. "Indeed, this was my father's Golden Experience, and I'm certain it was likely yours too." This was confirmed with a small nod from the gang star. "Exactly. It looks nearly identical to mine, although the colors are slightly faded on closer inspection. Mind if I run a test?" At the slightest suggestion of a nod, Golden Experience Requiem spawned at Giorno's side. In a flash, it reared back its fist and swung a punch at Viva la Vida. "Nuda!" it screamed out as Viva la Vida countered it by meeting its punch with its own. Genetwo tried to maintain composure and not show any reaction, but the strike force caused him to spill a bit of tea on his lap. Even then, he could tell Giorno was holding back. Once GER faded from view, Giorno closed his eyes and leaned back. "Reaction time is much slower, but that could be explained by lack of experience. The striking strength is definitely weaker too, but not enough as to not be effective. To most allies and enemies, I imagine that this would be a genuine article." Genetwo wiped the tea spill off of his leg as Viva la Vida disappeared. "I suppose so. It's done me well so far. Look, I have a bit of a proposition for you, or at least a request." "I'm listening," Giorno said as he set down his tea and steepled his fingers. "I came across these while fighting the Topak clan." He set down the duffel bag, opening it to reveal a large collection of stand discs. "These are..." "You don't have to explain what these are, Genetwo. I know exactly what they're used for.
It's good to know that after all that went down at Green Dolphin Street, that these discs ended up in good hands. He reached out, picking one up and inspecting it. Genetwo flinched a little but decided not to intervene. The visage of Sergeant Pepper appeared on its surface. I was there when the user who created these met his end. It was an absolutely chaotic day, but fate chose the forces of good to come out on top. Then you might be the perfect person to speak to regarding these. I wish to return them to their rightful owners. Stands are meant to be a person's soul, the embodiment of their being. Though originally my purpose in this world was just to get rich, I want to ensure that everything that was stolen from those folks is returned to them. Would you be willing to help me? I don't want to ask for much, just information and resources. Mighty noble of you, and yes, I would be willing. However, I'd like to ask a few questions first. What would you do if someone used said stand for villainous purposes? What if someone doesn't want their stand back? What if the user had died before their stand was taken? Whether they were killed by the priest or by other means? And what of those who are currently using these stand discs? Well, it's not up to me what someone uses their stand for. Still, if someone wants it back or their user is dead, I suppose I'll find someone who could take good care of them. He pondered for a moment before his ears perked up. Wait, there are more discs out there? People are still using them? Indeed, though you seem to have acquired most of them. Still, some of these discs have been taken by those who now treat them like their own stands. In fact, I believe one of the stands that yours can become is still being used. Oh, Green World, stand of Dr. William Donald Gaster. The surprise, already evident on Genetwo's face, grew to become intense shock. Wait, he's alive? I met what was left of him in the void between worlds. You're telling me he's still running around, and with a disc, no less? I can only take someone's stand once they've died or met a horrible fate. He can't still be alive. Yes, Dr. Gaster is a strange fellow from what I've seen of him. I'm not surprised he would eventually fall in such a way that would result in some strange manipulation of our timeline. In that sense, he is likely both here and still in that place between worlds. Still, my point is that he's still using that disc as his own stand. Are you going to take it from him, just for the chance to return it to whoever may have used it prior? Genetwo thought long and hard about this conundrum. After nearly a minute of silence, an answer came to him. No. If the stand has accepted him, and he has accepted it, I have no reason to interfere. Giorno gave a soft smile. Good. Now there is one last matter I believe we must discuss. His smile suddenly turned to a serious scowl as he glared at the Pokemon. Where is the arrow you are trying to protect? Fear crossed Genetwo's face as Giorno's intense gaze struck his soul. I am not trying to take it for myself, but I must assure that for the sake of this world, that it is in safe hands. It's with a trusted associate of mine, Genetwo eventually said. He's not with my organization, or any for that matter, but I assure you he's more than capable of keeping a hold on it. So it is still with the Wiggler. Fine. He seems to have a decent head on his shoulders. His expression went back to normal as he relaxed in his chair. If the arrow ever needs extra protection, please, contact us. I am more than willing to assign some muscle anywhere you'd need. Consider this an alliance of sorts, between Passione and Team Genesis, for the sake of ensuring the safety of that arrow, our assets, and the world at large. After concluding his statement, Giorno reached out his hand for a handshake. Genetwo took it cordially, and the two sealed their verbal pact. Once an agreement had been met, the two continued on with some small talk for quite some time. Giorno seemed quite curious about what sort of fashion brands would exist in another world, and while Genetwo wasn't extremely knowledgeable on the subject, he was happy to supply what information he could. Genetwo, meanwhile, shared his interest on what new Pokemon species may exist in this world, and described the few he had seen both on his trip here and in Toledo. Eventually, time came for the two to part, and Genetwo exited Giorno's mansion confident in both his mission and his new partnership. Days later, Genetwo sat in his office as he looked over the discs with a stern expression. He had made little progress in tracking down the owners of each one, but he was still just as determined to see it through. Communication with Passione had been helpful so far, as he had found the identities of a couple of the users. There was not much luck in finding their current locations, however. Viva La Vida rested on his desk, folding its wings under it to form a makeshift bed as it napped. As he stared at it, thoughts ran through his head about how he now had the power to control time. A similar type of power as his grandfather, but one he knew he would try his hardest not to abuse. With a deep breath, he stared back out at the lights of Toledo, his resolve to find the owners of each disc burning deep inside him. No matter what, he would honor his legacy and make his father proud. And that's the end of Unfrantic Fanfic 5.